Hi, I'm Claire from What Three Words. We're a company, I guess we're not so small anymore. We're based in London. We are about 80 people. We've had a pretty exciting journey over the last few years. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about that. And specifically, I'm going to talk about when we're thinking about the future and the technologies, particularly mobility of the future, how we can be using this technology to build something that's a bit more accessible and a bit more inclusive and a bit more global. But before that, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about street addresses. So this probably isn't something you think about or talk about very much, but street addresses, as they exist today, aren't very good. So, for example, if I told you I wanted to go to this beautiful waterfall, this waterfall doesn't have a street address because nobody ever tried to send a letter to this waterfall, so it doesn't have an address. So if I was trying to tell you to meet me at this beautiful place, it would actually be quite hard to explain. Or maybe if you're like me and you use Airbnb, if you use Airbnb, what I've discovered is the more beautiful the Airbnb is, the less likely I am going to be able to find it easily. So usually when I stay in a beautiful place like this, a shepherd's hut, or a tree house, or a boat on the river, I will end up with an essay from the host explaining, yes, of course, you drive to this town, and then you drive for 10 kilometers, and then there's a small wooden sign at the side of the road, and if you could turn left at that and then drive for another 5 kilometers, you'll see it in the trees. So that's kind of frustrating when I'm traveling the world and trying not to get lost. Anyone who's ever been to a festival, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You spend a huge amount of time on the phone to your friends trying to say, sorry, we're meeting at stage 5, not stage 6, or where's the coffee, or actually I've had too much to drink, I don't remember where my tent is. And it's very easy to get lost at places like this. Or if you just wanted to tell someone at Toa where the best, of all those little street food vans outside, where's the best coffee at Toa, I have no information to give you except maybe a description. Oh, it's near the sign and near the river and near the entrance to the Funkhaus. If you wanted to tell someone where this amazing street art is in London, actually, I mean, we're in Berlin, you have better street art than we do, but in London, this is in North London, and the problem is, this doesn't have an address because it's a particular bit of a particularly big building. Big buildings are a problem in general. So if I wanted to go to meet someone at Harrods, this is a very large shopping center in London, there's one address. Now that address might be helpful if I'm landing a helicopter or a drone on the top of the building, but otherwise, it doesn't help me actually enter the building. I have no idea here where the parking is, where the valet parking is if I'm driving a fancy car, where I'm meeting somebody, where the emergency access entrance is. So it's kind of frustrating. We might have seen this all over the place. So, you know, this is such a problem in general that addresses just aren't quite perfect. That, I mean, you've got this is like a proper durable sign they've put on their house which says entrance outside. This is not the entrance, this is not where you should be going. And it's even sometimes when you do have addresses, they don't behave the way you would like. Now, I love this example because this is a guy who trusted his sat-nav. That's what we humans do. We type things into machines and we trust them. Now, unfortunately, you can see here, there's a place called something like Laugavegur, and there's another place in Iceland with an almost identical name. The only difference is one R in the middle. And if you miss out that R, you drive for 5 hours to the wrong side of Iceland and get taken in by friendly villagers, not the hotel you were expecting. So it's very easy to make mistakes with addresses. And it's not just when they're long Icelandic words. It's very easy when I'm typing to mistype a C and a D on the keyboard and end up at Acacia rather than Acadia Drive. It's very easy to make those mistakes. It's easy if you've got duplicate addresses. So in London, you've got 14 church roads. Now that's annoying. And Mexico City, 632 Juarez streets in Mexico City. So it's easy to get lost when you're looking for your Airbnb on Juarez Street in Mexico City. And of course, sometimes you do have the addresses and they do behave the way you like, but you can't use them. I went to Japan lately. The problem for me is not only can I not understand these, I actually can't even type them into my phone because I don't know how to use the characters. I was recently in Japan and I'm vegetarian, so I spend a lot of my life on Google trying to find vegetarian restaurants. Now, TripAdvisor found one for me in Kyoto, but most of that review is explaining how to get there. It's saying, oh, it won't actually work in Google Maps and, you know, keep going through the trees. And indeed, this is my journey to this restaurant, through the trees. There was a sign, but I had no idea if this sign said, yes, you're in the right place, or danger, do not cross. No idea. And so I did eventually find it. It's very beautiful. If you are vegetarian, you should go here. But I was very hungry by the time I arrived because I was late, because we got lost on the way there. So that's frustrating. So these things are frustrating for me when I'm complaining about, you know, my pizza being late because they couldn't find my door, or going to the Airbnb in the wrong place. But it's also really frustrating. So imagine, for example, you need to use a wheelchair, and you are trying to visit the Tower of London. Now, they've done a really great job of saying, okay, these are the specific entrances you can use that might have a ramp for a wheelchair. this is the particular side of the building you need to go to, but actually this is kind of a PDF map you then have to download and look on your phone. You can't type the specific entrance into Google Maps very easily, and that's frustrating. So if I'm trying to find an accessible entrance to a particular building with a ramp, that's really hard work, and that's frustrating. And if you have limited mobility, it's more important that you can find the right entrance, not less important. Equally, if you're going to a hospital. So it might be critical that you get somewhere. Recently, my sister had a baby, and at one point we thought the baby was coming early, and actually what we instinctively did was not phone the ambulance, it was phone an Uber, because we knew it was going to be there quicker. So we ordered an Uber in the app, but then we realized there was one address for the hospital, and the Uber driver had no idea where the maternity wing was, and we basically drove around Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital in London for quite a while trying to find it. So that's frustrating. And sometimes it's more than just frustrating. I've actually been doing a project for a few years, not related to my job at What 3 Words, with women who are homeless in London. And what we do is we go out at night and we work with the women on the street to support them. And of course, if you don't have an address, it's really hard to know where the women are, where they are sleeping. If I'm trying to communicate to another support worker or another support service where she is sleeping, where she is staying in a park, where she is on the street corner, that's actually really hard to do because I don't have an address. And it can be really, really critical. And it's not just in London, where you might have these kind of problems, and in Berlin. This is in Saudi Arabia. Now, we have this problem for actually most of the world, 75% of the world, that doesn't have addresses. So you can see here, now there's a wonderful map made by Google. If you can get a satellite, you can pretty much get a map. That's great. We've got really good at making maps. But the problem is, you can't get a street address from a satellite. If they don't exist, they just don't exist. So if I live somewhere down here, my explanation of how someone can visit my house is going to be something like, go to Asfan Road, turn left, turn right, turn left, turn right. There's a gas station, there's a red door, there's a yellow door, and it's kind of frustrating. And actually, if we think about the future, about 70% of the world's population is going to be moving into urban areas by 2050. So that's really significant. When we're planning our cities, we have to assume lots of people are going to be moving into them. And if you've got 75% of the world right now that doesn't have addresses, think how many problems you're going to have when we've got even bigger cities with maps like that, with no addresses. How are you going to move people around? How are you going to move goods around? How are you going to reach them in an emergency? And actually today, so just today, 4 billion people don't have an address. Now, I'm complaining about pizza and Airbnb. What does it mean if you don't have an address? It might mean you cannot call an ambulance. It might mean you can't tell your friends where your dinner party is, but it might also mean you cannot register to vote. It might mean you can't open a bank account. So we sort of take for granted here that we have addresses. They may not be perfect, but we have them. And there are lots of people in the world who don't have it. And this is in South Africa, Kennedy Road in Durban. Not much happening on the map, but all of these people live here. So those people who don't have an address, who don't have a simple way to explain where they live. So all of these problems are, of course, frustrating today and sometimes critical, and they're about to get worse. If we think about autonomy, this is Ollie, the autonomous shuttle that you guys might know in the US. Now, before we get to the stage where we have driverless cars, it would be quite nice if the cars went to the right place. So right now, when my taxi or my Uber driver and I can't find each other, or I'm in the car and we're going to the wrong place, we talk to each other. They can't find me, I say, hey, I'm standing outside the Funk House, I'm wearing a pink dress, can you see me? That doesn't work when you don't have a driver to talk to. So this is a problem we should probably solve today before we take the drivers out of cars. Luckily, we've been thinking about this, and we basically decided it's time for something new. Instead of using an amazing digital maps with addresses that were designed 200 years ago, why don't we design addresses for digital maps, for phones, for drones, for cars, for smartwatches, for Google Assistant devices? So what does that mean? Well, there is an existing addressing system for the entire world, and it looks like this. GPS coordinates. Everywhere in the world has a GPS coordinate. It's very accurate. You can specify a door. You can specify a spot on the beach to do yoga. You can specify the parking space for your wedding. The problem with this is, well, this. So if anybody said to me, hi, Claire, we're doing yoga on the beach at 25 degrees, 9 minutes, 40.918 seconds, etc., I would say it's relatively unlikely I would make it there. I'm probably going to miss out one of those. I don't know if anyone even knows where the degree sign is on their phone. Pretty confusing and difficult. So we wanted to take this and make it human-friendly. So what we did is we took the entire world and we wrapped it in a grid. It's a grid of 57 trillion squares. Each square is 3 meters by 3 meters, and every single square, every single one of those 57 trillion squares, has been labeled with an address made of 3 words from the dictionary. So if I say to you, I'd like my package at Thread Strollers Bumble, that is a 3 meter square, 3 meter by 3 meter square in Germany. Our office in London, you can come and find us. We just moved. Our old office was Index Home Raft. Our new office is Filled Count Soap. So everywhere in the world has one of these unique addresses. So the title of the talk today, Artist.isolated.oasis, that's one of the entrances to the Funkhaus. So everywhere in the world has one of these addresses. If you're meeting on a park bench for a date in Berlin, you can meet at this exact 3 meter by 3 meter square. If you are trying to meet at a stadium, every different entrance, emergency, delivery, VIP, they all have their own addresses. So the way this works is it means we've labeled every 3 meter by 3 meter square. So yes, it does mean we're looking at a future where someone says to you, oh yeah, I've parked the car at Spicy Float Monday, or Pirate Gather Daisy, and that makes sense to you. So that's what we've done. We've done this all over the world. So this is an app that you guys can all download and find out the 3-word address of your front door and your back door if you have a back door, and your favorite treehouse if you have a favorite treehouse. So everywhere in the world already has an address. You just have to look it up, discover it. It never changes. So once you've discovered your address, you can look it up and use it however you like. Now, we've done this all over the world in 26 languages so far. So you can see there, this is a 3-word address in English and also in French. You can use it in German. If you speak Swahili, you can use it in Swahili. So we've done the whole world in 26 languages. Now, the words seem random. So when I tell you my old house was Slug Vines Bucket, there was no reflection on my house. There were no slugs in the house, I hope. And the words have no meaning, but there are some rules about how they've been distributed. And this is the main thing to notice, is that table chair lamps, that's in the US. Now, table chair lamp is in Australia. These are quite similar combinations, and we're humans. We make mistakes, as we know with our guy from Iceland earlier. We're going to make mistakes. So what we did is we said, OK, let's make it so that if you make a mistake, it's instantly so obvious you never go to the wrong place. So if I'm sitting in my car in New York, and I type in table chair lamps, but I miss off the S, so I type in table chair lamp, because table chair lamp is in Australia and table chair lamps is in the US, my car will go, Claire, you are not trying to drive to Australia, you meant table chair lamps. So that we've created an addressing system, the first one in the world that has error detection. So you guys can keep making mistakes and we will fix them for you. So that's the way it works. You can see here I was sitting in London, I missed off the first letter, but it knew I meant toffee branch pyramid, not coffee branch pyramid, because toffee branch pyramid is in the UK and coffee branch pyramid is in India. So that's the way it works. We're used all over the world in about 170 countries now, which is pretty exciting. I'm going to show you a few of the ways we're used. So this is one of my favorite examples. This is in the Caribbean. We're used by Domino's Pizza to make sure your pizza gets to you hot, because even saving 2 minutes matters when you'd like a hot pizza. So this is Daly, who helps deliver pizzas using 3-word addresses. It's used in travel guides all over the world. So you can look up restaurants and cafes, and they will tell you the 3-word address of their door so that you don't get lost when you're finding them. I love seeing Airbnb hosts sending out 3-word addresses in their booking confirmations and their emails. This is a chalet, I think a skiing chalet, which didn't have an address, so they were giving out 3-word addresses. They just wrote it in, just like as part of all the normal address information, they gave you the 3-word address so you didn't get lost. And if you drive a Mercedes, or you want to have a play in the A-Class, which is outside, Mercedes was the first car company in the world to bring what 3 words into their cars. So from this year, new Mercedes cars, so the A-Class, for example, you can get in your car, you can say, hey, Mercedes, navigate to what 3 words sunroof mole jingles, and it takes you to that exact 3 meter by 3 meter square. So with your voice, you can say 3 words and drive to the right place. So you can start trusting your sat-nav again, and not necessarily always having to get your phone back out and ignore what the in-car sat-nav is saying and using your phone. So you can use 3-word addresses to navigate around the world. So at the beginning, we were talking about the different reasons addresses are critical. There's some really amazing ways that companies are using our technology. So we have a piece of code which you can integrate into anything. And I love this example. So this is an app called Safe in the City that helps people navigate around a city safely. So they, for example, if you're a woman who's getting harassed on the street, you can report your street harassment using a 3-word address, and it can get plotted on the map so other people can understand maybe this is an area I want to avoid, for example. So we love seeing how people use our code to do all kinds of things to create safer cities. This is a taxi company in India, so they have a fleet of women taxi drivers who will pick up women passengers to make sure that people feel safe and comfortable. And of course, if you're waiting on a street corner for a taxi, you'd really like to know the taxi's coming to the right place. So they use 3-word addresses for pickup and drop-off, so their drivers can make sure that everybody gets home safely. It's also used by the UN, for example, in disaster response. So if you think about an earthquake or a hurricane, you actually don't have any street addresses. Even if there were street addresses before, after a hurricane or an earthquake, you may have none at all, and it's even more critical than ever that you can explain where things are, where the emergency services need to go, where someone needs rescuing. So it's amazing to see that used. And actually, this is from Mexico, the earthquake at the end of last year. It was pretty touching for us in the office. We got an email from some people at an organization working with the government to do disaster response, and they just said, hey, we just wanted to let you know we've been using What 3 Words in Spanish to coordinate emergency response in Mexico. Equally, they've been using us in Haiti in delivering cholera vaccinations, for example, or installing clean water. So it's being used all over the world in disaster response and recovery. And one of the amazing things we've seen is people taking our tech and building stuff with it, which changes people's lives. This is one example. So this was an email we got a couple of years ago from this doctor. And he got in touch, and he'd read about us in the press. And I remember the first phone call with him, and he said, Claire, women are dying because my ambulances cannot get to them in time when they're having a baby. So minutes or seconds can be absolutely critical. And in a township or an informal settlement, so he works in South Africa, lots of people living in an informal settlement without addresses, how on earth are they supposed to tell the ambulance where they live? And so what he's been doing is he's put a project in place where people visit their homes. So even if these people don't have a smartphone, his team will take their smartphone with them. They give them a little sign like this that says, this is your 3-word address. If you need to call an ambulance, just say these 3 words and we will know exactly where you live. So they can just say these 3 words and the ambulance will be able to route to that exact 3 meter by 3 meter square of their home. So it's pretty incredible to see that being used. As we look towards the future, we're trying to make sure that we're building inclusive cities that are accessible. And one of the amazing things is seeing how NGOs and actually governments are using What 3 Words. Just to finish, I'm going to take a quick detour to Mongolia. So this is Mongolia. Highly recommend that anybody should go and visit. It's an unbelievably beautiful country. And it was also the first country in the world to officially recognize 3-word addresses through their postal service. So this is the CEO of their postal service a couple of years ago. And what they did is they firstly asked us to make a Mongolian version of What 3 Words. So if you speak Mongolian, you can use What 3 Words in Mongolian. If you go and visit and you don't speak Mongolian, you can still use English or German. And the Postal Service are now able to deliver letters to people's front doors. These are stickers that say, hi, this is your 3-word address. Use this when you tell someone where you live, when you're ordering something online. And this is a 3-word address on the bottom of a letter in Mongolia. So you can see those 3 slashes. That's the sign for a 3-word address, and you can see the 3-word address in Mongolian on that letter. Since then, it's been used in all kinds of ways. So the government uses it to tell people where the hospitals are. If you want to order pizza from Pizza Hut in Mongolia, you give them a 3-word address and your pizza arrives. You want to find KFC in the capital city of Ulaanbaatar, you've got a 3-word address for each of the KFC branches in Ulaanbaatar. It's used on TripAdvisor. You go on TripAdvisor to look up the places you want to visit. 3-word addresses are all over the place there. And even walking around the city, you see signs like this in the window. People have got their 3-word address proudly displayed because this is the addressing system. Now, we've had 8 other countries follow the lead of Mongolia. Mongolia was the first. It was the country that leapfrogged. It went, why would we rely on outdated systems when we have loads of mobile phones and loads of young people who are digitally enabled? Why don't we skip ahead and use an addressing system for the future? It's pretty incredible to me that Mongolia did something. It's something we're using in Mercedes cars. It's something we're using all over the world. But Mongolia was the first country to really, run with this and take it, which is a pretty incredible story. This is even the British Embassy in Mongolia. They have a 3-word address sign on their door. So from Mongolia to Ohio, so this is Ollie, the bus I mentioned at the beginning. There's an incredible project with Ollie, which is called the Accessible Ollie Project. And what they've done is they've tried to think, if we're creating autonomous vehicles for the future, how do we make these accessible for people? So they've specifically designed this with voice using IBM Watson, so that if you're visually impaired, you can get an autonomous vehicle. You may not have been ever able to drive because you couldn't see properly, or you weren't able to pass your test because you were visually impaired. Instead, you can get in an Ollie because there's no driver, and you can tell Ollie with your voice, hi, Ollie, take me to kept mini stages. And firstly, it's going to get you to the exact right place, which really matters if you're making sure, if you're impaired in a way and you want to make sure you get to the right door. You can use your voice, so you haven't got to worry about typing, and Ollie will take you to that exact place. So that's been an incredible project we've seen of how people are going, right, what are these technologies of the future? How do we bring them together and build something that's a bit more accessible and a bit more inclusive, and I guess from our perspective, a bit more global as well. So this is a bus stop in Ulaanbaatar. So you can see every bus stop in the capital city has a 3-word address on. This is even an art gallery in Paris. So if you go there, it's actually the name and the address of the art gallery. So they named it Tables Empty Workshops after its 3-word address. And even here in Berlin, if you go to Potsdamer Platz and see the HQ of Deutsche Bahn, this 3-word address is on the window. I'm sure it's very confusing if you've never heard of What 3 Words, but now you guys all know. You're in the tribe, so you know when you see these 3 random words with those 3 slashes in front, that's What 3 Words. So that's us.
Thank you very much. We're going to have time for just one question. Thank you very much also for keeping in time. So the top question that was voted on Slido was, is it possible to find the addresses offline since some places without addresses might not always have the best reception?
I love this question, yes. So What Three Words is based on an algorithm, not a database. A database would be huge. If you think 57 trillion combinations and 26 languages would be huge. Because it's a very small algorithm, it's about 12 megabytes, and you can put that in a car, in a phone, in a drone, and it will work fully offline forever, and the addresses never change. So if you are going hiking in the middle of the Gobi Desert, you can still use What Three Words with zero data. You don't need any internet to use it.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Everyone give a nice hand clap. Thank you.